Bryn Renner, former Tarheel quarterback, is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. He will, for the rest of the season, be part of the radio broadcast, but he took last night off to take it all in. Are you glad you weren't on the air for it?
Adam, thanks for having me. I wish we were talking about a Carolina win, but as far as the atmosphere was concerned, I think, looking at the whole picture, I think it was the first time, I actually saw the students and the fan base and the entire campus be electric. It was special. And, a lot of people have been saying it today on a lot of different broadcasts, especially ESPN, but the atmosphere, and Pat McAfee described it really, really well. For that first drive, it felt like it was like a college playoff atmosphere in that building. I mean, place was going nuts. Yep. And there wasn't an empty seat. And Gio returned the punt against NC State. That's my favorite play of Gio's career, my career of, that's the most electric it was, but it was like that from the opening kickoff. And that's really cool to see. Obviously, the product on the field that we'll discuss later wasn't what we all hoped for, but I think there are some positives that you can take away from last night's game.
Oh, there's no question. The anticipation for yesterday. I mean, ESPN told you that much. They'd never brought so many people to town for a Labor Day game, and we've had great Labor Day matchups in the past. We had Florida State and Miami opening up when Miami joined the league. Florida State and Miami opening up the season on Labor Day. We haven't had this kind of attention paid to it. I actually think it'll go on the rest of the year, and because I think that there's a number of people who either don't think it will work, don't want it to work for whatever reason, and I call them rubberneckers. Like rubberneckers, like you're looking at the accident. You want to find out what happened. I think that there's as much fascination for that as anything.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's really, if you look at it from a big picture, you can't really predict how your team's going to respond when you haven't played anybody. That's why preseason games, I think, in the NFL are still so critical. And even when you can practice against opponents, it just gives you such an advantage because you know where you stand. It's like playing poker. You have no one else. You don't know what the other person has until you flip over the cards. So I think, it's fine not to overreact week one. And I remember we played LSU in a tight matchup in the Georgia Dome when Butch was there in 2000, I think that was 2010, and we had all those guys coming back. And we did not play well in the first half, but we came back and fought. And that was a really, team-defining moment for us. TJ went on to have a great rest of his career. And it was one of those games where I was like, okay, well, we have a good team. Well, now you get a chance, you got a quick turnaround to kind of flush us away, and you got to play Charlotte right away. So I think it's kind of good for us to kind of be like, okay, where do we stand? Where are we? Who can play and who can't? Can we get better from this? And obviously you can. And so, there was really two plays that stuck out to me when you look at the numbers is the obvious pick six that Gio had with 4 minutes left in the half. And it's a really, really tough throw to the field. And there was some things that he could have done better and probably not thrown that ball. And he would want to have that back, obviously. And then you give up a 14-point swing with the first play of the second half going for 75 yards. And it's like that took the wind out of your sails because it's a 10-7 ball game and going into halftime. And I think everybody would be thrilled because it's a 9-win TCU team over there with a really, really good quarterback who showed he was 27 of 36 for 284. And he looks like an NFL player. So there's some good things, but those two negative plays really just crushed the entire momentum for the first half.
Bryn Renner is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show at Bryn Renner on Twitter. By the way, I'm completely on board. Those two plays were, to me, there were 3 plays in the game, I call them moments, that really changed the game. The first one was the defensive pass interference on TCU's second drive, which I thought was a bad call. I didn't think it was really a catchable ball. Carolina had the same thing done to them, and it was allowed to stand. Again, I didn't think either of them were pass interference. For me, do you remember that play on the second drive?
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
Absolutely not. I did not think it was DPI at all. I think both those calls were very, kind of the referees getting their kind of feet wet in calling plays in live time. And I think that's happened multiple times. I'll never forget Ron Cherry told me he missed a holding call and it really cost us. And I'm like, well, you can't miss a holding call, but it happens. They're humans. I'll never forget this, Adam. I was like dumbfounded that at least he was honest. He goes, "That wasn't I missed it," and I'm like, "This is ridiculous," but it happens. It's life. There's human nature, and so I think those were two calls that kind of changed the tide as well.
Yeah, and then you talk about the pick six, which maybe it was a bad decision, but it was also very, to me, severely underthrown. If he throws it where only the receiver can get it, at best it's batted down, but in this case it ends up being six the other way. And then first play out of half, where, I don't know, I mean, you would know better than I, it just looked like the defense was easily blocked on the play because nobody laid a glove on the guy.
Yeah, and there was a couple times where the guy's walking in the end zone, and that's obviously concerning. I think, obviously the first game, and you saw it throughout college football all weekend, I don't think the quarterback play from the guys that we anointed before the season was all that special. Look at Arch, you look at, a couple guys that we were like, okay, well, these are guys that are – the only kid that played well, I thought, was Nussmeier, and playing on the road at Clemson, and he's a good football player. But if you look at quarterback play as a whole, it takes a little bit to see different defenses too. And I know that just from playing, like, you're going against your defense every single day from spring until training camp. You're like, oh, I'm the man. I can, throw it through everybody. And then you get humbled. You're like, oh, wow, they're actually playing, cover three instead of, just quarters or whatever your defense plays every day. So it takes a little bit. And I think it's, as quarterbacks get in the flow, you got to see, obviously they have the tablets on the sidelines now, and you can kind of get in the rhythm. And then defensively, the flip side is kind of like, okay, we haven't tackled another opponent. And like I said, you tackle twice, maybe you have two scrimmages throughout the course of training camp. But really, it's really just a period. Maybe it's a block of 15 to 20 plays, but tackling in all of football now is really hard to do just because of the physicality. You want to protect your players because it's going to be a long, grueling season that we seem to just keep on adding more and more games to, right? So in order to win the national championship, you got to play 15 games now. It's like, soon, Adam, we're just going to play 20 games and everyone's going to have to be a gladiator. So you really can't tackle that much. And so it's really just, the first games are always really tough. And I think I said it before the game on the call. I was like, if we can just get to the fourth quarter within a score, I think it's such a win for us. Obviously it didn't turn out that way, but I think there's positive momentum. And I think getting to Saturday at 8:00 when we play Charlotte is going to be a good time to do that.
Bryn Renner is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. You came this close to calling this generation soft, Bryn, but that's all right. But your larger point, and I'm glad you said, meanwhile, we're adding all these games. And I think Bill's probably, having to deal with that and adjust to how he goes through the process of preparing his team. And this will happen over time. I didn't feel like the problem was as much missed tackles as it was not being able to get off blocks and put themselves in position to make tackles as much as anything. What are your thoughts on Gio Lopez and Max Johnson? Max looked really good when he came in. Of course, different situation in the game. But what are your thoughts on the quarterback position?
Yeah, I always think it's good to have two quarterbacks. I've said that for a long time. It's a long, grueling season, like I just mentioned, and you're one play away from that guy going down, and you got to have two. And I always remember when John Shoup was like, "Hey, you're one play away from being the CEO of this company," and I'm like, "Oh wow!" So that made me prepare. It made me prepare, and it's the sense of urgency to have two, and I'm really proud of Max and his, almost 12-month recovery mentally and physically. And it's probably took a toll on him mentally more than physically. And just to see him come in there and complete some passes, yes, I understand what the score was, but to stand in the pocket, and he delivered a great throw and got hit in the face. And it's really hard to do that. And I'm really happy that he did that. But I think, as far as Gio's progression, he's still learning and growing. You guys watched me play. I threw terrible interceptions. I threw 4 picks against Rutgers, and everyone thought I was the worst quarterback in the entire world. So, I never give up on quarterbacks, Adam. I just never will do it because I know how hard the position is, and I know what he has inside of him that he can get better and learn from. And it takes some reps. It really takes a new continuity with new receivers, and you got to remember he wasn't here in the spring, so he didn't have those reps. So he really only had about 3 weeks, a 3 week body of work with the coaching staff, a 3 week to get the playbook. And I'm not making excuses for him. I think the reality of the picture for a young man who's learning and growing in a really hard position is you're going to need both these guys down the stretch. And, I really think it's you get Charlotte, you get Richmond, then you get a bye week, then you go play UCF. And it's like, okay, if we can get in that race and see who our quarterback is and see who our team is, then we have a chance. But it starts with one game. It starts with practice today. And yeah, I sound like a coach, but that's just the mindset you have to have because you got 11 more games left.
Well, you have weaned yourself off of coaching. Good for you, because that's a hard life, man. Especially at the college level. Bryn Renner is joining us here. You threw 64 touchdown passes, so I'm going to force you to give yourself a break for your career. I do want to circle back real quick because one of the things I want, one more question about quarterbacks, then I want to circle back to that 2010 team. The fact that Gio Lopez and Max Johnson are so different, is that good? Because if you're gonna, I'm going to assume that both will play, whether it's by design or because it is a grueling season. Is that good that the offense really has to be very different for each player?
Yeah, I think there's benefits to both. I think there's obviously Gio is a little bit more athletic than Max, and that's obviously known. But they're both left-handed, so you don't have to the bootlegs and the play action passes can kind of be the same for the same hashes, which is great. But I think the dynamic that Gio provides in the running game we didn't see last night, but I think he does have that. And I think you've got to get a feel for what the kid can do. It was the first time Freddie called plays for him. And I think that's kind of, something that has to get worked through as well. Hey, what's our identity as an offense? How is our offensive line? Can we hold up at the point of attack? Do we have to change things? And the best offensive coordinators and the best coaches that I've been around adapt the offense to the players that make plays. And I think that's the biggest thing that you have to find out, especially early in the season, is, okay, who are my playmakers? Who can I depend on third downs? And if you look at last night, Adam, we were 1 of 10 on third down. So, that's a big stat of 1 for 10, and especially in the first half. We held the ball for 27 minutes throughout the game, but it didn't feel like that because we were going 3 and out. And 1 of 10 is, you would like to be 50% on third down, ideally. That's what they say, and to have a chance to win. And we were 1 of 10. So I think if you could put Gio in a position to have a 3rd and 4 and be able to complete some short passes and get started early, I think that's great. Because you look at the first drive, he threw a great ball down the sideline, and then kind of let us down for a drive. Caleb Hood had a great run, and then we kind of got away from some things that once you're down 2 scores, you have to kind of start improvising. So I think there's really just too many unknowns to kind of figure out who we want to be and how we want to attack, and with the body of work that we have so far.
Bryn Renner joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Probably the last question, but I am curious because so much was said about, North Carolina's always been this as a program, like 7-4, 7-5, 8-4, whatever. And I get it. I would say the same thing mostly about Oregon for years and years and years, and now we see what Oregon is. But I do recall a time where it looked like it was changing, and the only thing I can compare what the lead up to the game last night was that team in 2010, because that team had tons of future professionals on it. And we all know what happened and why it was derailed. But do you think that had, I guess, Marvin Austin not tweeted out rap lyrics, which ultimately was the tipping point in all of it, had that team not come under such scrutiny for things other than football, do you think they were about to usher in like a real era of UNC football?
I think that's the closest we've ever been, Adam, to having a real competitive, nationally contending football team. And it takes that recruiting class. It takes a Butch Davis. It takes a NFL mindset. It takes the rigorous. Honestly, that's why I came here, to change the course of North Carolina football, and I was Butch Davis's first quarterback recruit. And, it was the NFL mindset. It was the same thing that, Coach Belichick's trying to build. And I think to do that, it takes some time. And I was telling my dad this morning, Butch started off, I think we had only like 7 wins, maybe 8 wins, and they were competitive games, but you have to get your recruits in. You have to get the belief of the team. And that 2010 team, we had 9 guys out of the 11 playing in the NFL, and 7 of them got drafted.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at, TJ played 7 years in the NFL. You had guys like, Jay Boyd was a top 5-star recruit, and we had athletic guys. I mean, Giovanni Bernard played 10 years in the league. So we've had the individual talent come through this university. And that's what I saw yesterday. I felt the atmosphere. I'm like, man, this could be, something so special. It could be a Clemson. It can be that ACC school that has that rich tradition, because we've had the Drake Mays, we've had the Sam Howells, we've had so many good individual talents, but we haven't won the ACC title since 1980. I do think we can get there, but that 2010 team, I think, when Butch had us rolling and we lost by, a Zach Finalto dropped pass in the end zone against LSU, we were so close. And we were playing Patrick Peterson, and we still had our players out. And that's what was fascinating to me is the depth that we had. And so, but it took, Butch 3 or 4 years to get that
right.
going. So, and I know Coach Belichick and Coach Lombardi and everybody at UNC wants it to happen, and they're working their tails off to do so.
Bryn Renner, what a gentleman. Appreciate your time. Sorry you had to go through that last night, but brighter days ahead, my friend. Enjoy the game on Saturday at Charlotte. I know we will be talking to you often throughout the season, and hopefully we'll see each other soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Adam. You're the best.
Bryn Renner. Yeah, he's the best.